Hi, I'm Nikki, the obsessive bookseller. Welcome to my channel. Today, I'm going to be doing something fun that I saw on Books with Emily Fox's channel. I'm going to be looking at the lowest rated books that I've read on Goodreads and see how my ratings compared to the masses. I'll link her original video. It was super fun, and I did ask permission to use this idea, and she said, yeah, totally go for it. So, we're going for it. I thought it would be really fun to go into this blind. I've not looked up which books are on there. And I'm predicting that most of the books on here are going to be rated higher by me than they were on Goodreads, especially because I know a lot of the obscure ones that I read when I was quite young, and I was very forgiving back in the day. I think I give out maybe 1 5-star read a year now, but back then I was like, everything gets 5 stars. And I'm not one of those people who goes back and retroactively changes my ratings because that would just be a hot mess. At the time, they were rated highly. Anyway, I am super nervous to see, got my Goodreads here, what the books are, how I rated them. I have marked that I have read 1,769 books on Goodreads. So I'm just going to pull up the list of read books and then resort them. Sort by average rating, ascending order. Oh shoot, this could be complicated because there might be a few books that I've not actually put a rating to, but we shall see. Okay, so the first one is Dayfall by Michael David Aries. Average rating 2.64 stars. My rating 1 star. Yes, I'm ahead of the curve. Well, technically 1.5 star because I was being generous. What drew me to this book, there was a really interesting concept of, there was like a post-apocalyptic bombing or whatever, and the results of that is that there is no longer any daylight coming through. You're like covered in this smog, like a blackout cloud cover, if you will. And it was supposed to be this really cool mystery novel that took place among all of this, and if I remember correctly, none of these cool things were actually present in the book. The ideas for the story were better than the actual execution, and it was something to the effect of like, every time someone saw daylight, it would drive them insane, like mentally insane. But I don't think that the world had been cloud covered for that long. I don't feel like that kind of adaptation would happen that quickly. So there were a whole bunch of technical issues wrong with the book from the beginning. And I also found the characters pretty inconsistent. So yeah, this was just a bad book. And I read it back before I gave a lot of low star ratings, so that should tell you something. Yay! First one out of the gate. I am in line with what Goodreads reviewers said. I am going to skip nonfiction books because I don't want to get into it. Next up, The Betrothed by Kiera Cass. Average rating 3.2 stars. I gave it a 1.5 star. And here's the thing, like, I'm not hating on Kiera Cass. I absolutely loved the selection, and I thought The Siren, a standalone novel, was awesome. Really like her writing. I had trouble with story components in this one, not the writing style. So this one was about this girl who in every way was supposed to be this perfect match for the prince. But the problem is there was nothing established in the text that shows you why she was better than everybody else. It was just a given. And I found her character so inconsistent, like maddeningly inconsistent. There was absolutely no struggle from anything right from the beginning. So when a character doesn't have to work for anything, it just makes you feel like you're not getting a really substantial story. I mean, struggle is conflict, and without struggle, you just have a meh plot. And because she didn't have any real strong conflicts, when something did happen, she just kind of went, breezing on through it, no emotion whatsoever. And she didn't care, and therefore I didn't care as a reader. So, yet again, Goodreads and I kind of agree on that one. Supernova Era by Cixin Liu. I have read Wandering Earth and a couple of other short stories by this author, but I have not read Three Body Problem yet. I know that's like the quintessential work. This one rated 3.28, and I think I'd give it about a 2 star. I didn't actually rate it because it was a DNF for me. The idea was really cool, but it just drug along so long, and it dealt too much with the technical aspect and not enough on the human side of things that I had no connection to anybody. I couldn't even tell you the name of any of the characters in the story. Probably couldn't tell you even right after I had read it. And it was just kind of boring. I think the execution on this one struggled. And Cixin Liu is nothing if not conceptual, so the books that I did enjoy, the novellas and short stories, those were phenomenal. But they were also really technical. You had to be in the right mindset for it. So it is possible with Supernova Era that I just wasn't in the right mindset for that. But Like, am I ever going to go back and reread it based on how lowly most people on Goodreads rated it? Probably not. This is really fun. Next. How to Ditch Your Fairy by Justine Larbalalister. We're going with it. 3.35 average rating. I gave it a 3-star. And honestly, I probably wouldn't have read this one, but my best friend Charlotte loves this book, and I know exactly why she loves this book. And the things she loved about it were the things that I also liked. But I just felt like it didn't really culminate anywhere meaningful for me. Not that it needed to. It's like a young adult, cute little romance book. But the whole point is that each person has these fairies that give them different fun attributes. And so, like, for example, because we talked about it at length, mine would be an organizing fairy, and it kind of gives you a superpower. But this girl got a lame one. She got a parking fairy, the ability to find a good parking spot. It's super cute. It was fun. It was just okay, but not rated very highly. The Poison Diaries by Mary Rose Wood, 3.36 stars, average rating. I gave it a 3-star. It was just okay. I think when you advertise something as being poison heavy, City of Lies, you should actually have lots of poisoning in the story. And in this case, I wanted kind of like an apothecary. I wanted to learn about the poisoning and stuff. And actually, this one did do it better than City of Lies. But again, the story was just okay. Nothing to write home about, not a bad book, but not as great as I was hoping it would be. I'm just going to briefly mention a couple of more YA because I was kind of hoping to focus some more on fantasy stuff. But Soundless by Rochelle Mead, average rating 3.38, which doesn't seem like a low rating to me. I guess I don't read too many low-rated books. But I gave it a 4-star. I thought it was a cool concept and well executed. Scorpion Rules by Erin Bow, 3.39 rating. I gave it a 2-star. It went from like wildly entertaining passages, these like most riveting things I've ever read from one scene, to the most boring thing I've ever read in this other. It was so inconsistent in type of storytelling. So that's why it got a 2-star for me. The Adamantine Palace by Stephen Diaz, 3.39. I gave it a 1-star. This to me, I feel really bad about this rating, but this to me, 1 star, was one of the worst books I've read. It read like a grade school student's attempt at a fantasy novel. It did not feel polished. Everything felt really thin. The dialogue was awkward. The ideas were okay, but the execution was so off for me that I couldn't even read it. I had such a difficult time. And I said as much in a review, and I know the author saw it, and I feel really bad. This was like years ago. But he like reshared it on his blog. Like, I guess all publicity is good publicity. But yeah, I struggled with it. And the thing is this cover is absolutely gorgeous. I've seen available some hardcovers of this series floating around, and I want them just because they're pretty, but the contents, I mean, the thing is like maybe it would work for someone else, but me and this guy are just not on the same brainwave. So chalking that one up. The Disasters by PC Cast. Not the best writer in the world anyway, but 3.4 stars was the average rating. I am lucky if I gave it a 2. Like, I did not like that book. The Drowning City by Amanda Downham. Average rating 3.41. I gave it a 2-star. So this one wasn't a horrible read, but it also didn't deliver on some promises. So the story, it pitches like a necromancy type of tale, but that just was kind of like minor to the entire plot. And then on top of that, like, I feel like your main character should be the most interesting person that you're following. The only other place I've seen that not be the case but done well is in Richard Swan's series. The focus of this main character was on all of the other interesting characters, and she really didn't have anything compelling about herself, and I found that a big problem. And as a result, the story kind of felt aimless. So yeah, I'm coming in at a 2-star, a lot lower than the average. A couple of other young adult books, which we'll skip for now. Geez, lots of them. Oh, book 4 in the Legacy of the Dark Sword trilogy. You heard me. So the average rating is 3.47. I gave it 4 stars. The fact that it's a trilogy and this is a 4th book should be an indication like the authors were done and then for some reason decided to tell another story. And I think it's been a really long time since I've read this series. I liked the series quite a bit. This one kind of jumped the shark for me a little bit. You've got like this fantasy tale, but I think in this one there was like, don't quote me, but I think there was like tanks and modern military elements to it, whereas that wasn't really the focus of the first 3 books. So yes, I can see how people picking up this fourth book, this bonus book in the trilogy, might have been disappointed, but I really like these writers, and I think I was just excited to have more to read in that series at the time. So yeah, one of them that my rating's actually higher. Sweep of Stars by Maurice Broaddus, average rating 3.49. I gave it a 3-star. This one is a recent read for me, and I wish I had liked it more. It had some really cool ideas, and I loved the cultural infusion. There's definitely a lot of like ethnic things in this story that I found really fascinating to be combined with like a science fiction setting. My problem was there were too many point of view characters, and I found the overall mystery plot a little bit hard to follow. I think it was a bit vague on purpose to keep you guessing, but it came at the cost of clarity, and I thought it was a bit convoluted. And with so many POVs, I kept getting a couple of them confused. Even though I physically read this one, I was really careful trying to remind myself who everybody was, but there was just, yeah, too many moving pieces. It was interesting enough that had the next one been out, I might have been tempted to keep going, but yeah, it didn't work for me. And also, I started this one with the narrator, and the cadence was off. It was different than the punctuation in the book. So it read very disjointed when you were listening to it, but then when you read it physically, that problem went away. But anyway, yeah, just had a couple of issues across the board. Mirror Empire by Cameron Hurley. Controversial one, I think. So the average rating is 3.49. I gave it a 4-star. And I think the reason people rated it lowly is because there are a lot of, let's say, taboo things in this story. Not like as many as the Beldam Apocrypha, but this is definitely an edgy writer who isn't afraid to make people uncomfortable. And in fact, I think it's her goal to make people uncomfortable in the books that she writes. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars, actually. So good world building for me will always go a really long way. And I thought this book was so cool. It was so different from anything that I'd read. It challenged gender norms in a way I'd never seen done before, and made me think really critically about the things I just accept that happen to women in stories. Really cool stuff here. But I can see why people would be like, nope, 1 star, not reading that. I really liked it. I need to reread it to continue the series at some point. Randomized by Andy Weir. It's funny, I think Emily had this one on hers too. Average rating 3.51 out of 5 stars. I gave it a 1 star. This should have been good. It was like Vegas hacking, technical stuff. It's part of the whole construction of this short story was very poorly done. It all seemed pointless. It was a really weird thing. When I read it, I was like, what the heck did I just read? Like, that was not a satisfying story in any sense of the word. And then I was like, where have I seen the author before? Oh yeah, he wrote The Martian and Project Hail Mary. This should have been a slam dunk. But yeah, one of the worst little snippets that I've read. Don't waste your time. Disappearing Nightly, the Esther Diamond series by Laura Resnick. I gave this one 2 stars, 3.52 average rating. It's just a bit lackluster. Like, of all of the urban fantasy stories, you've got to have a good mystery, you've got to have a good main character, and your world building has to be different. And the world building part was interesting. She did have kind of a different take on it, but yeah, nothing else about the book was particularly satisfying for me. And yet I'll probably still continue because I have masochistic tendencies when it comes to urban fantasy books. I'll keep reading. Oh, this one hurts a little. Blood Engines, also in urban fantasy, by T.A. Pratt. This one's actually one of my all-time favorites because I thought it was so creatively done. But it is a little bit gritty and occasionally a little gross. But the cool, in-depth world building that he's doing here was better than most of the other urban fantasies that I had read. Like, there was so much, like, I don't know, deep stuff, and I really loved his writing process. I loved his character design, and the books were a ton of fun, at least up until where I read. Book 7 was a bit of a letdown, but anything up until book 5, like, pure gold. Good stuff, but average rating was 3.52. I gave it a 5 star. Okay, we're gonna do 2 more. Unclean Spirits by M.L. Hanover, or, if you're familiar, Daniel Abraham. This is a pen name that he used to write this urban fantasy series. 3.53 out of 5 stars was the average rating. I gave it 2. And I love this man's writing. I just got through gushing a couple of weeks ago, Blade of Dream. Anything he writes, I will consume, except apparently this series here. This was one of the most disappointing urban fantasies I've ever read. The characters didn't feel developed. And it's not that they were poorly developed, it's just they didn't feel developed at all. And as someone who is known in my mind for exceptional character development, it was just weird. The whole world building aspect of the story was quite lackluster, and it didn't play a good role in the story for me. I wanted a bit more of the magic. And the plot wasn't compelling, it was very straightforward and simple. But yeah, it was just not good. And it's funny, I read this with my buddy Scott, and we had both just gotten done reading Long Price Quartet. When was this? Like, back in 2018 is when we read this one. But yeah, we had read Long Price Quartet, and we loved it. Absolutely loved it. We read The Dagger and Coin. Absolutely loved it. And then tried this one a couple of years later, and yeah, both of us, nope. I have these books on my shelves still, and when I get around to that shelf for Read, Burn, Hoard, I may have to let them go. And last but not least, Sorcery Rising, first book in the Fool's Gold series by Jude Fisher. Thank you, Science Fiction Book Club, because that's the only reason I have this one. So 3.55 out of 5 stars. I gave it a 4-star, and I think the discrepancy here is that it had really good world building, and I always tend to rate world building a little bit higher. What I remember of this series is it had this amazingly cool atmosphere, some interesting character profiles, and a nautical setting, like just some cool stuff in here. I love the main character, but I think the reason it's rated lowly is because it was a little boring, like a little dry. You had to really want to know what's going on next in the story to keep going. I was enamored and I had more patience back then, so yeah, I kept reading, but I do remember it being a bit dry. Good stuff though. And as I'm scrolling further, book 3 is next in line. So this was really fun. It made me realize that not a lot of books are truly that lowly rated on Goodreads. I mean, everything we were talking about, most of it was above 3 stars. So that's good to know anyway. I guess if I'm ever looking on Goodreads trying to do research, if I see something that's 3.5 out of 5 stars, I'll know immediately that it's probably a bad book. I really did think I was going to rate a lot of them higher than what the average was on Goodreads, but hey, I'm a harsher critic than I even knew. I think it would be really fun, like if you have a minute, sort your list on Goodreads of read books and see which one's the lowest rated and like see how you compare. I'd be very curious. There were some very obscure things that I skipped in here and a lot of nonfiction books that were rated lowly, but you know, we're not counting those right now. Anyway, thanks so much for joining me, and I hope to catch you on the next one. Bye.